Hi, this is Jaya. In this video, we shall see about the later developments which happened in the modern linguistics historical survey. Many different approaches to linguistics emerged in the middle decades of this century. Functional sentence perspective is one of them, which is an approach used by the Prague School of Linguists to analyze utterances in terms of the information content and is still widely used in Czechoslovakia and other East European countries. The semantic contribution of each major element in a sentence is rated with respect to the dynamic role it plays in communication. Then we have dependency grammar, which is a type of formal grammar developed in the 1950s, notably by the French linguist Lucien Tesneret. It explains grammatical relationship by setting up dependencies or valencies between the elements of a construction. Tagma mix is a theory developed since the 1950s by the American linguist K.L. Pike, which focuses particularly on the need to relate linguistic forms and functions. The contrast between the emic units are functionally contrastive in a language, such as phoneme and morpheme, and the etic units that give them physical shape. Then we have stratification grammar, which is a theory devised by the American linguist S.M. Lamb in the 1960s that views language as a system of related layers, that is strata of structure. And in systematic linguistics, which is a theory developed since the 1960s by the British linguist M.A.K. Halliday, in which grammar is seen as a network of systems of interrelated contrast. Particular attention is paid to the semantic and pragmatic aspects of analysis and also to the way intonation is used in the expression of meaning. Chomsky. In 1957, Avram Noam Chomsky, professor of linguistics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, published Syntactic Structures. He developed the conception of a generative grammar which departed radically from the structuralism and behaviorism of the previous decades. Early analysis of sentences had failed to take into account the difference between surface and depth and deep levels of grammatical structure. At the surface level, sentences like John is eager to please and John is easy to please can be analyzed in an identical way. That is, both will appear same to us. But from the point of view of the underlying meaning, the two sentences will diverge. In the first sentence, that is, John is eager to please, shows that John wants to please someone else. But in the second sentence, John is easy to please, here someone else is involved in pleasing John. And therefore, the major aim of generative grammar was to analyze sentences at the level of structure. Chomsky drew a fundamental distinction between a person's knowledge of the language of the rules of the language and the actual use of that language in real situations. That is, one individual person may know the rules of the language, but at the same time, how they are using it. When they are using communication, that is language, to communicate the ideas, they will change that rules and modify it according to their convenience. And therefore, the knowledge of the rules of the language is known as competence. That is your competence level in the language, but the actual usage of the language is known as performance. And linguists, he argued, should be concerned with the study of competence and not restrict itself to performance, something that was characteristic of previous linguistic studies in the reliance samples or corpora of speech. Chomsky's proposals were intended to discover the mental realities underlying the way people use language. Competence is seen as an aspect of a general psychological capacity. Linguist was thus envisaged as a mentalist discipline, a view that contrasted with the behavioral bias of previous 20th century work in the subject and connected with the aims of several earlier linguists such as Port Royal grammarians. The target was to provide a grammar capable of evaluating the adequacy of different accounts of competence and of going beyond the study of individual languages to the nature of human language as a whole by discovering linguistic universals. A major feature of Chomsky's approach was the technical apparatus he devised to make the notion of competence explicit, the system of rules and symbols that provides a formal representation of the underlying syntactic, semantic, and phonological structure of sentences. A primary notion, the transformal rule, led to the approach being commonly referred as transformational grammar, or which we generally say as TG. Since the 1950s, much of the linguistics have been taken up with proposals to develop the form of generative grammars. Thus, linguistic theory is now a lively and controversial field. If you have anything more to add on to what I've said, please write it in the comment box, like the video, share it with your friends, and if you have not subscribed my channel, please subscribe and support. Thank you.